As part of our Canada 150 coverage, we're taking a look at the country's largest city, Toronto. I chatted with Mayor John Tory about the milestones, the challenges, and why people just love to hate this city. Toronto. Born in the 1800s, it's grown into a mature and somewhat feisty young adult. From then to now, a lot has changed, especially from the current mayor's perspective.
I think it was boring. And I think maybe less offensive as a result to people across the country because it was sort of boring and there wasn't much going on here. I mean, it was a big city, but nowhere near as big as Montreal at the time. Today, you could do anything. Of course, your selection of places to go to eat is on a global scale, and both because it represents the globe in terms of food and because the quality is that way.
This city originally didn't have global ambitions. It was a small town. It was a small city just doing its own thing. And yet, here we find ourselves compared to these great cities of the world. How did we get here?
Because of immigration and diversity and Canadian values all mixed together. And I think the immigration has built the city and changed it from being boring to being exciting.
The city of Toronto has grown to nearly 3 million people, with another 3 million more spread out around its suburbs. It's one of the most multicultural cities in the world, home to people who speak more than 140 different languages and dialects.
The challenges of managing a multicultural city are the same nowadays as managing any city, in that you have people within even the most diverse city in the world who are going to be comfortable and doing well for themselves because they are, and those who are struggling. And so if there's a challenge, it is to make sure we maintain the open hearts and the open minds of accepting people of different faiths and different sexual orientation and skin color and nationality, which we're pretty good at.
Since 2015, Canada has welcomed more than 40,000 Syrian refugees, and thousands of them chose Toronto as their new home.
To me, the challenge is simply one of taking all these people that are sort of pouring in here and making sure we integrate them as quickly as possible into the positive aspects of life that will allow them to provide for their families and be successful Canadians.
John Tory was elected mayor of Toronto in 2014. 3 years into the job, sometimes you just have to roll with the punches.
I've described before the experience of being in public life and waking up and you turn on the TV and there on CTV is some story affecting Toronto you've never heard of before. And it's 6 o'clock in the morning and you're saying to yourself, where did that come from? But you know for the rest of your day you're going to be dealing with it. And so you have to be able to deal with that and be a certain nimble and willing to reach out and find out what it's about and learn about it and try and find a solution.
One of those pop-up issues, the fentanyl crisis, which has hit Toronto hard and fast.
And I think that the generation of people more your age than mine are prepared to say, hey, like these are fellow human beings, they have an illness, we have to help them, as opposed to looking on them with scorn or somehow saying we should give it an injection of tough love. Well, we should try to get people off drugs and we should work with them to do that, but in the end, these are people who are suffering.
Other issues, like transit, have been around for generations. Toronto has struggled to find better ways to move more people, and sometimes it can feel like a lost battle at City Hall. If one of the parties suggested they would, in collaboration with Toronto City Hall, rewrite the City of Toronto Act to empower the mayor's office, really give Toronto a more powerful mayor structure, is that something that you'd say, I could get behind that?
I would certainly say they're on the right track, even if the changes applied after I left office, either because the voters put me out or because I retired. I believe that this city is of a size and a complexity and has issues that are all its own.
For Tory, Toronto has always been his home, and even if he loses the next election, it's probably a safe bet to say he won't be going very far.
It's a great place to live. I mean, we raised our 4 children here. We now have 5 grandchildren, and they all live in the Toronto area. And if you sort of think about the opportunity, first of all, you think about the general livability of the city. You think about everything from schools to, to recreational facilities. It's a great place to live. In the next 150 years, can you see a possibility of the Leafs winning a Stanley Cup? 150. Yeah. Like, I think we could measure it in months, not years. Oh, do you? I have said that if I'm given another term by the voters, which means there's 5 years, 1 year left in this term and 4 more after that, we will host right there, right over there, we will host one of the grandest, and that will be the culmination of a grand parade up Bay Street, which I'm old enough to have remembered the last one. A good old rivalry. Habs fans love to hate the Leafs, and even outside the rink, Tory has some words for Canadians who love to hate Toronto. You know, you should be thankful that I exist as the Mayor of Toronto, any mayor, that Toronto exists because it unites the country, and sort of saying we don't like that place, we don't like that man because he's the Mayor of Toronto, and there it is.
Every good story needs a villain.
Exactly.
There we go.
That's exactly
and
right.
Toronto will play that role for you, Canada. I'm glad that the mayor got my memo on what to wear so that we looked exactly the same during that interview.